Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're just giving it a couple of minutes for some other people to join, and then we'll get underway.
Oh, get rid of that.
I'm seriously going to invest in a little Jeopardy music clip just so there's something that can play in the background. I need it all the time. Well, I think in the interest of time, just so that we can give Laura her full presentation time and lots of time for Q&A, because I'm sure we're going to have quite a few. I think we'll get underway. As you'll notice, we are recording this session so that we can post it to the West Niagara Chambers YouTube channel. Because I know everybody loves to sit and watch YouTube videos later on, so we'll make sure we we are allowing that. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for joining us today, and hopefully we'll have a few others that pop on. It's a really important topic, especially as we're all facing some workforce development issues, and this is a big piece of the puzzle, is how you navigate compensation and other retention type of issues that help keep your workforce in place, I guess. I know one of the very traditional things to do now is a land acknowledgement, and we're kind of shifting it a little bit here in Grimsby, so I'm going to beg forgiveness from the other two chambers for going a little off script, but really, we've all heard that this is the treaty lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. But I think what I really love, what I think tells the story and fits really well into what we do here as chambers, is the actual treaty. It's a dish with one spoon treaty, and it means that there's enough for everyone. It means there's one big dish and one spoon, and you take what you need, and everybody gets a slice of pie. And that's kind of what we do here at the chambers, is this idea of collaboration and making sure everybody has enough and bringing people together and building relationships. So I think there's a really nice dovetail in the original intent of the treaties that we're on, the tree land that we're on, and how some piece of how we operate today. That's not to say that there's not a ton of work that still needs to be done. But I think if we all keep in our back of our minds relationship building and collaboration, it helps move that needle forward a little more. So I will not take any more time of Laura's presentation time, but I do have a really fun little intro bio on her. So I'm going to read that because it's so much fun. So Laura is a certified human resource leader and the founder of Essential HR. She knows that when businesses face HR problems, there is no room for ambiguity, only positive results. For the last 15 years, Laura has blended sound HR practices with her pragmatic approach to improve business performance. Now, Laura leads a team of HR professionals as they navigate complex HR situations with managers, help guide decisions, and instill confidence with actionable steps. Wow, Laura, I have a we're not worthy moment. And this is my favorite part, is in her spare time, Laura enjoys the company of her husband and two children. The kids continued to help her hone her leadership skills of navigation and compromise. And after a decade, her husband is starting to warm up to the performance reviews. So, Laura, if you perfect that, that's a skill you're going to need to do a separate workshop on. So, with
Yeah,
that,
that would be
with all that, I will pass it over to the amazing Laura to get started.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen here and have that, moment where we all hopefully don't panic if it works. All right. So I'll give a bit of a context as to where this whole idea came from with the joint chambers. And thank you so much, Rebecca and Amelia, and all your help with setting this up. Back in January, I got together with another chamber member, and we were talking about what do small businesses need right now? How can we support? What information can we give? And we got together and did a lunch and learn on site in Beamsville, and we thought we want to make sure we can get this message out to more people. So compensation is a huge piece of the puzzle, obviously. And as small businesses, we often don't know where to even begin. And what we wanted to do at Essential HR is provide support to those small businesses who can do a little bit of do it yourself or a little bit of do it for me, depending on where you're at, to know how do we get into a place where we're confident with our compensation system, or at least more confident than we are when we started. So this is where this presentation came out of, and it's been fantastic to speak with a lot of local employers about this topic. And again, when we talk compensation, it's a big pie. We're taking a few slices out of it today. So if there's something that wasn't touched that you're like, hey, I really wanted to hear more about this, we have two options. Throw it in the chat, ask a question. I have no problem if you interrupt. If the question is relevant, feel free to do that. I'm going to rely on our EDs from the chamber to help me out because I don't look at the chat at all. I kind of just run through things. So if you guys want to interrupt, ask a question, please feel free to moderate that. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end for the questions. Okay. So who is Essential HR? So this is always the point of the program where I start getting nervous after the first slide won't turn. And that delay, I told you, see, there's always a delay with the first slide. There we go. So we help small businesses as a fractional HR business partner. So some of the brands that we're working with right now, you might recognize Cheekbone Beauty, Weight Loss by Gina. Dietiba is a pharmaceutical. Habitat for Humanity is nonprofit, both in retail and in services. Some other nonprofits that we work with are Startup Canada, Young Caregivers. We don't niche down as an organization, but we work with a multitude of different types of industries. And we find that we've taken some of the big business experience that we have all gained as HR professionals and really customized that and made it manageable and relevant to small businesses. So today we're going to talk a little bit, a quick economic outlook, talk about building a compensation philosophy, which is really the foundation of everything else. We're going to talk a little bit about benchmarking and market analysis, wages and job postings, because this is a fun one that's come up lately, and finish up with total rewards communication. So where are we? This was a slide that was published from data at the end of January 2024. And this is why compensation is important as a small business owner. As you can see here, there is a deficit of workers currently and getting worse as we project out from 2022 to 2031. When it comes to attracting and retaining great talent, it is important to understand why we pay what we pay and how to advertise, how to market ourselves as an employer of choice because of that. Now you're saying, Laura, I'm a small business. I can't pay the top dollar that some of these big businesses can. And I completely understand that. And that's why we're going to talk about total rewards communication. Inflation, we can't talk about compensation without talking about inflation. I have one client who loves COLA, loves cost of living increases. And last year gave pretty much that full, I think it was a 6.5% cost of living increase. And then this year came around and said, well, what do we do? Because now we're down to 2.25. And what they found with giving straight cost of living increases is people were really disappointed this year with their increase, and they didn't understand all of what goes behind the increases that the company was choosing. So cost of living increase, you can see we got hit hard. Depending on where you're getting your information from, the numbers are similar, maybe not exact. This year, we're rounding out around between 2 and 2.5%. And this is what we're also seeing in the trends, and what the compensation reports are saying is the average of what people are giving in increases, especially based off of last year, where the increases were significantly higher than normal. So this brings us to building a compensation philosophy. What we need as employers is to move from how much should I be paying to this is why I pay what I pay. That's the difference in the confidence that we have. We've thought through all of these pieces around our compensation systems. So the first thing you want to think about is, what is your compensation approach? Now, you have essentially three options. The first is you can lead the market. And leading the market is fun because you get great quality candidates. And a lot of times they can't leave because not very many people are going to be paying more than what you pay. This also can lend itself to having people stay longer than they should, where some natural turnover should actually happen. This approach makes recruitment quite easy, and typically is a very big win for the people who are joining your team. The second option you can have is you can lag the market. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of us as small business employers understand that we might not be able to be leading the market. We might be a little bit behind average. This can be an opportunity where you take the reins to really market the other pieces of your total compensation philosophy, your culture, what you bring to the table as an employer, in order to make up for what might feel like a lower than average job wage. And then finally, the last one you have is meet the market. And this is where a lot of us like to stay, finding ourselves that when we see other job postings posted for similar positions that we have in our own companies, that some of them are going to be more than what we're paying as employers. Some of them are going to be less. That's kind of how you realize that you're meeting the market when it comes to your compensation approach. So as an employer, you have to understand, where am I going to start with my compensation approach? Where do I want to be? The second thing you want to consider is, how does my compensation approach and my compensation philosophy align with my corporate culture? So if you're an employer who says, we are all about our people are the most important resource in our business, but you might be lagging the market and not being able to come to the table on the culture piece and the work environment piece, you got to wonder if what you're saying as your compensation philosophy is actually being translated in your corporate culture. If one of your core values is we are big on communication, but you don't actually communicate your compensation philosophy or your compensation decisions to your employees so that they understand, then your values are going to come across as disingenuous. The third piece of building your compensation philosophy is making sure you're building it with intention. So what are your business goals? What are you looking to achieve with your talent? What are the objectives that you're using to essentially measure the salaries and the output and the productivity of the individuals? How do they know that they're doing a good job? What does your labor look like? Are you in an industry that might be saturated with people, or are you in one that potentially has a very difficult time finding niche employees with your experience that you need? Do you pay more to fill tough jobs? All of these pieces are going to be what help refine your intention with your compensation branding. So when you're competing for talent as a smaller company against the bigger companies, you need to be able to determine and explain how your corporate culture differentiates from those of other companies. And this isn't something you come up with, potentially in a couple minutes. This might be something that you have to think over and consider and sleep on for a few days. Talk to other people about who it is that you want to be as an employer and how are you going to communicate that. So this doesn't come from Laura just being, a genius in this environment. I love when you are a small business and you're learning as you go. Some of us, are having fun building the plane as we fly it. And as an HR company, I would love to say, I started off and my onboarding was phenomenal for my new employees. And we had compensation down and our recruitment process was 100% every single time, but that's just not the case. We build things as small employers because we're learning as we go as well. So what we know as actual theology is not the word, as technical expertise and how it plays out can sometimes not align. So this compensation philosophy document was actually born out of the need for our own company to really define our approach to how we compensate our employees. So this is insider information. This is shared publicly with our team of 5. And it came out of the desire to know why do we pay what we pay? So our labor market position is, we say we compensate employees at market rate for the geographical location that they are in. And we determine this by salary surveys and analysis of other job opportunities. We provide additional compensation above what the market commands through individual lump sums. So we have a base plus variable based off of company performance and personal performance. Now, this is where it gets fun, is when we start aligning our compensation philosophy with our values. So for our company, flexibility, client focus, and teamwork are our 3 big values. So when we look at our compensation, we believe flexibility in our compensation philosophy is very important. So one of our team members is very salary focused, and she feels valued through monetary gain. And we know that we have that conversation. And so we know that when we're looking at annual salary review time, that it's going to be a number and an increase. I have another individual who loves the flexibility of the job that she is in. And 2 years in a row now, when we go through salary increase time, we actually don't increase her salary. We reduce her hours, because that is what her desire is, and that's where her values are. Client focus. So in terms of, and maybe some of you have had this conversation with your own teams. When we talk to our teams about what a good job looks like, a good job is a high level of quality in terms of service delivery to our clients. That's a baseline expectation. Baseline expectation is that you provide great service and your clients love you. Above that is what go above and beyond. So that looks like coming up with new service offerings. Maybe increasing retainer pricing by offering additional support to the clients. That is above and beyond. But baseline to us is great service delivery. Teamwork. So we believe that bonuses should be paid when the company as a collective is doing well. And this is one of those things that's been refined within our organization, because what we found when we gave individual performance based off of commissionable sales and those types of things is we had some individuals who were holding on to greater shares of the work in order to get potential commission, and others who didn't have enough work and wanted to help out, but it was misaligned with how we were paying bonuses and causing issues internally with our team. So we changed how we paid out those bonuses as well. And that just gives you a little bit of an inside expectation of how our values align with our compensation philosophy. As you see here, we have our expectations around when salary reviews happen and what salary increases look like. But again, I encourage you to think these things through when you're looking at your compensation philosophy and how do you want to pay your employees and what information you want to give them. Which leads us to benchmarking. Where do we even start? with benchmarking, and how do we know what the market is paying?
Hey.
The first thing we want to do is look at relevant job titles and job descriptions. We have one small business client who is a marketing and graphics design firm. And in order to provide a little bit more job satisfaction, in lieu of being able to offer top tier salaries, they changed people's job titles. So now they have a director of operations, or maybe it was director of sales, who after a year in the role decided to go benchmark his job title against other director of sales and operations. Well, as you can imagine, at a company of 10 people, that looks very different than what he may be looking at from job title perspectives, whether it comes from Indeed, Glassdoor, or anywhere else that he's finding this information. So when you're benchmarking jobs, you can't just do it on job titles. You really have to understand it against job descriptions. You need to identify your key competitors in key industries and collect data from various sources. So you have some, and we'll talk about where to collect data from, but I don't believe in just looking at one data source. I think there's too many data sources out there to just rely on one alone. This one is one that I love, adjust for geographical differences, because as Niagara residents, we often think, well, we're not Toronto, so we don't pay Toronto salaries. We're a little bit less. Our cost of living is less. Our, what we require as individuals is less. And maybe that was something of relevance 10 plus years ago, but I pulled this, and I believe it's for an IT role. I pulled this off of the Government of Canada website. And what this shows you is that geographical differences aren't as variable as we might think they are. Geographical differences are amounting to give or take 50 cents to $1 on the minimums, and then a little bit higher on the maximums, but they're not as variable as we would like them to be when we say, well, we're in Niagara, so we don't have to pay the same amount. So when you're benchmarking, it's just something to keep in mind as you go through the exercise. And then company-specific factors. So things we don't consider when benchmarking is hours of work. Oftentimes you might look at a job title and your hours of work might be a 9-hour day, where somebody else's might be a 7.5-hour day. So trying to determine these variables can be challenging, but it's all things that you want to consider when you're looking at your benchmarking data. So where do you find this data? Compensation surveys. So these can vary from a couple $100s to tens of thousands of dollars. Oftentimes you can look at some of the big guys like Randstad and Mercer, and you can download portions of their compensation data or pieces of it that might give you a high level approach. Government data, the Government of Canada website, HRSDC, provides some data on averages for job titles. It doesn't give you so much on the job description, but it bases it off of NOC codes. You have your professional associations. So if you're looking at specific associations, whether they're professional services or whether they're other certificate associations, sometimes they can provide you with salary survey information as well. And then you get to your online salary databases. And this is important because this is where your employees are going when they come back to you and say, I'm not being paid enough, and this is why. This is where they are collecting their data. If you've ever jumped on Glassdoor, or if you've ever jumped on payscale.com or salary.com, and you're looking up information, the first thing they ask you is, where'd you work? What's your job title? And how much do you get paid? And unless you're, a website genius, it's really hard to even look up your own Glassdoor reviews without putting in salary information. And this is what we call crowdsourced data. So when your employees are going to try to benchmark what they should be making, they're going to Indeed, and they're going to LinkedIn, and they're going to payscale.com, and they're going to Glassdoor, and they're going to salary.com. And they're finding this information and they're bringing it back to you. So you need to know what is out there on the salary databases, the online databases, the crowdsourced information, so that you can have an idea as well. Because what I've found sometimes when employees have brought this to me from, some of the clients we work with, they say, this is what a lab supervisor makes according to Indeed or according to LinkedIn. What they're also not grabbing is the 4 other databases that provide this information that might not fit their narrative that they're looking for. So keeping abreast of what's going on in the crowdsourcing world as well for your job titles is important. And the other one is direct competitor analysis. And the government is making this easier for us. And we'll talk a little bit about having to post our pay bands online shortly. But when you go looking at some of the job postings now, you'll see more and more have wage bands on them that give you a general idea of what your competitors might be paying. On the same token, you'll be giving that information out to them shortly as well. Because wages on job postings is coming to Ontario. It's something that British Columbia has been going through and working through over the last, I think, year or two. And a lot of the US states have also required it. It's not something that has been required in Canada or in Ontario. So in 2022, 37% of online job postings included salary information. I would bet that this is higher now, even from what I know that I post. We were probably close to like 60 to 70% of the postings we post are include a wage band on it. What does this mean for employers? So we haven't had the legislation rolled out to us yet in Ontario about what will be required on job postings. It hasn't been indicated whether it's just going to be a starting salary or whether it's going to be a wage band, but it's going to put more pressure on us as small business owners to really understand our compensation systems and make sure that when we have to go post a job, we're not causing internal turmoil because all of a sudden now we're putting compensation data on the web and all of our other employees are saying, well, why are you posting to pay somebody $20 to $25 an hour for the same job that I do for 18? And I think as small business employers, we actually have more of a challenge with this than the larger organizations who likely have wage bands set up, who have gone to some of the, the KPMGs and the Mercers, and they've established a lot of this information. And there's a larger people group in order to have those bands. A lot of us small employers, we might have 8 or 12 people in our organization. And so understanding how the jobs relate to each other and the value, and having those tough conversations with our small teams who we sit, chair to chair with on a regular basis is going to put a lot more pressure on us. Now, there are benefits, and there's lots of benefits to putting wages on job postings. When we do recruitment jobs, I love when we can put a wage on a job posting because it helps people self-select. It reduces the number of candidates who are going to apply who you would probably never be able to offer a job to because their salary expectations don't align with what you're looking for. On the flip side, one of the problems with posting a wage on a job post, and I'll give you an example, an HR example. If I were to be posting for an HR generalist, and I say, I might take somebody with 2 years of experience, but I'd also take somebody with 7 years experience. It depends on the candidate. I can work with both. Well, my 7 years experience individual, I might say I'll pay 65,000 for. And my 2-year experience individual, I say I'll pay 45 to 50. How do I post that so that the 2-year or 3-year or 4-year individual doesn't say, I'm going for that 65 number? Because as humans, when we see a range of 45 to 60, immediately we're like, I'm going for the 60. You know what? I'm going to be a little humble. I'm going to go for 57. So how do we manage this in light of situations where we want a little bit more flexibility based off of someone's experience. And we also don't want to kill the engagement and the heart of the individual right off the bat of this potential recruitment relationship and the employment relationship. So this is where we get to have a little bit more fun and be a little bit more creative in how we approach things and the communication that we have with individuals throughout the recruitment process. This is the final piece of what we want to talk about today is total rewards communication, because this is where most of us, small or large company, miss the mark. When you have a total rewards communication, it's going to illustrate to employees what is included from A to Z in their employment with you. Oftentimes, we as employees only see one number, and that was the number on the offer letter or on our pay stub. But total rewards, as you know, as employers, we pay a lot more for an employee than just what was put on an offer letter. And so giving people a better understanding of what the total rewards looks like is going to help people understand what the benefit is to them for working for you from a compensation standpoint. So here's a quick rundown of some of the things. This is actually one that we pulled from one of our clients. It has a few things in here that, I mean, we all wish we could have in ours and are a little bit special. But we start with compensation. That's the easy one. Rewards value, the salary. Then we talk about cell phone and stipends. This employer is remote and actually gave the benefit of a stipend for house cleaning, which is pretty fantastic. That's one of the goals in my life as well. How do I get my company to pay for my house cleaning and everybody else's? Other bonuses and other perks and events. And again, you're like, this feels a little bit minutia. This feels a little bit like we're grasping. You don't have to do it this way. This is just an idea of how to structure what a total rewards communication might look like. A health and wellness summary, so it extends all the way to the benefits. I was just having a conversation with a client who their HR manager, and we were talking about how great it is because this client actually pays 100% of their benefits to their employees. Now, that's fantastic, except for the fact that the employees actually have no idea what their benefits cost. So when you have a copay of 20% or 10% or whatever it might be, and you're paying $20 of the 100 that it costs each month to have those benefits, you understand the value of benefits. There's one individual whose benefits, because of his age and his family, cost about $550 a month, and he makes $21 an hour. So his benefits are actually 30 to 40% of his total take home. And he probably doesn't have a clue. And that's a really valuable piece of his compensation and total rewards that he should know about. So additional benefits include, employee investments, maybe the company RSP contributions, but we also like to include how much the employer pays on taxes. And again, your choice. But a lot of times employees don't know that there's a significant cost on the employer in and above the salary that they have to pay. And it can be upwards of 12%. Then we add in what the days are for vacation, sick, personal, public holidays, remote work to get a number at the bottom. Now, do we send this out like a spreadsheet? Sometimes, depends on the client. We've also done it at the time of the end of year when the bonuses come out that will explain, here's your salary, here's your bonus, here's some other things, here's what your total compensation looks like. And by doing this, we're opening up the conversation so that people know that salary and total rewards is more than just one number. And it allows for greater clarity into why companies make the decisions that they make when it comes to salary review time as well. I like to keep this one in here. I think I saw Jeremy jump on this somewhere, and this was his slide. So I'll give him credit for it. If anybody doesn't know Jeremy from Garrett Group, and he runs the Chamber Group Insurance Plan. So I stole this from the presentation that we did together. Thanks, Jeremy. And this is benefits to alternatives to a pay raise. And I want to use this because we've recently used this in our company. And I think it's a really pool approach to total compensation. So recently in our own company, we implemented LTD and critical illness and an HSA. And one of my team members, she has a young son who needed about $4,000 or $5,000 of dental work done. And she's a significant leader on my team. And I said, how would you feel if I just implemented an HSA for you as opposed to paying out your bonus? And that way, instead of me saying, give or take a number, let's say $4,000, I pay $4,000 in bonus, government takes 30 to 40% of that, and I actually pay an additional 10 to 15% on top of that for my taxes. As opposed to that approach, when I give an HSA for $4,000, the employee is getting $4,000 of that $4,000 when she uses it or he uses it. So you can see how the numbers for both benefit plans and HSAs roll out in favor of the employee and pretty much neutral for the employer. But anybody who needs to pay $3,000 or $4,000 of dental work and actually gets a $4,000 HSA to cover it would understand the value versus a $4,000 bonus of which you only get less than $3,000 of it. So one thing to consider as you're moving through compensation is that benefit plan and HSA, and I'll give a shout out to Jeremy. You can tag him on here in case anybody wants to talk to him about this, because he's the one who did ours for us most recently. So there is your high level overview of making sure that with this new implementation of wage bands needing to be on job postings and how to support our teams internally and building out that compensation philosophy, that's where we kind of end up with here at the end. And I left a lot of time for Q&A because the last time I did this presentation, Q&A took up more time than we expected. So if there's any questions, please open up your mic, put them in the chat, and we'll start it off this way. I love Amelia's questions. Amelia's got the best questions.
Thanks. I think you did. I don't actually have any questions right now. I really loved the presentation. So, but I can ask one while people are typing, maybe if I'll just start it off. Do you see any trends from your, like even in your examples in your small businesses that you find work really well? Like some of your clients have tried this form of communication or this path of which one works best, or do you it's just really what works best for every employee, because every job applicant and every employee is kind of different?
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed in the last few years, and we've changed it with one client, is it was a pharmaceutical client and they had a big bonus in place for their employees. So up to 15%. Most employees got in between 9 to 14% on their base salary in bonus. And when I was going through exit interviews with individuals when they were leaving and asking them about, compensation and how they felt about their compensation in comparison to everyone else, one thing that became very clear is nobody considered their bonus as part of their total compensation. It was icing on the cake. So when they said, well, I'm leaving this job for $7,000 more down the street, they didn't consider that piece of their bonus. So what we actually did is we removed the company portion of the bonus and brought the bonus down to a personal performance bonus of 5% and added on, I think it was 9% to everyone's base salary to be more competitive in the marketplace from a purely visual expectation. And I don't know about you personally, I kind of feel the same way. Whenever I've had bonuses, it's always been icing, not necessarily what I consider as my compensation. Any other questions?
I have a question, Laura. Can you hear me?
What I will say is we've currently
No,
built,
Katie, sorry, Katie, I think it was Katie, right? I think
Yeah,
that
can you hear me?
your mic is really weird. You can only hear you a little, but there is a question.
If you can't hear me, I'll pop it in the chat.
Oh,
There.
there it is.
Okay.
There, it's better.
Sorry, I was pushed up against the wall too much. Yeah, so Laura, I before having this webinar, I've realized that I've made a little bit of a mistake. So I have an internal employee that I'm looking to promote and give more responsibility to. And instead of coming with my compensation philosophy and here's why we pay what we pay, I made the mistake of asking them what they thought the
Mhm.
position would be worth. And they've come back with a number that is more than I am able to pay at this point. So how do I recover that conversation at this point?
I mean, I think there's a psychology point of this as well. If you were asked that question, I think we would all poke to the high end. It's still a negotiation at the end of the day. You're offering a promotion and they can choose to accept the promotion or not accept the promotion with its salary. And if they believe that the promotion should be $60,000 and you go to do some benchmarking analysis and find some data that might support a position that says, actually, I'm comfortable with 52, and it's going to be below market data or average of market data. This is what I found. I don't think that you should be worried about having that conversation because at the end of the day, the decision on the salary is yours. They don't get to determine their own salary. They've brought to you what they hope for. And I think as humans, we all hope for more than, we where we're at. There's very few times where I've talked to anybody in any level of any organization who said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I make exactly what I should be making. There's always that little piece of it. So I would just turn around and be like, thank you, for your research. Can you give me some data? I got to crunch some numbers on our side to make sure that this role is sustainable at the salary that we're going to give you. And I've also found this information that says the market says this is about the average of what it should be. So I would take it back to the same way that if you were hiring this person fresh off the street and how you would negotiate that job offer.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. One more quick question.
Sure.
I love the beautiful chart you had about the compensation philosophy. And obviously your overarching philosophy is the same for the whole company, but would you have, not all roles are going to be base plus variable, so would you alter that chart a little bit for each employee, say an hourly employee versus a salary employee?
I would probably make it and distribute it for the people who need to see it. So
Okay.
if your senior leadership is different, then I would potentially make two. Either way, I would make it as clear as possible. So the whole point of this is that we're opening up the conversation. So if your senior leadership is base plus variable and your hourly employees are not, this is a reason why they want to work hard to get to that more senior leadership role. There is a benefit to being in those other roles. So I think you could split it out with both. The point of the compensation philosophy is this is what we're communicating to our teams. So if you're not comfortable communicating that, then don't. If you say we're not at the point where this makes sense to communicate to our whole team in this manner, then I wouldn't do it. If it's going to cause more internal issues, then it's going to benefit.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Leanne.
I have a question. I'm representing a not-for-profit sports team, and we're looking at, it's not my normal business that I attend the chamber for, but it works out well with timing. And we're looking at, so right now, all of our coaches, we just kind of have an honorarium system. So they're not employees. We still don't intend to have them as employees. We intend to do it as a contract position. So right now, their compensation is just an honorarium that they get twice a year, and it is still based on the hours that they coach, but it's way under minimum wage.
Yeah.
So we're trying now to move to a more formal system where we would have a contract in place and have, you know, specific requirements and have a contract. And I guess at what point are we required to offer minimum wage or above in that kind of a situation?
If they're considered an employee,
No, they're not. Like we would have them as independent contractors.
independent contractors. So as an independent contractor, the subcontractor, independent contractor has the ability to negotiate their contract.
Okay.
So with that in mind, you have a lot more play and you don't have to consider minimum wage because the independent contractor has to consider whether they want to accept the contract as it is. And the one piece of the independent contractor is you have to prove that they are not an employee. So you don't necessarily set the times or set the, yeah, there's a lot of gray here. I think
Right.
it's a bigger conversation on the honorary
Okay.
piece.
I guess we just don't want to get down a road too far that we didn't want to be down, but we want to be able to offer them a bit more than what we had previously.
How do we formalize this, but don't put ourselves in a box that's going to cause issues down the road?
Correct. And right now we're in a good position, but you know, when we went through COVID, for example, we didn't have any of our recreational programs in place, and that, like in that kind of a situation, that wouldn't even be an option.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's based off of hours worked essentially. So that
It
goes
is,
back
yeah.
here. Let's have a conversation because I want to bring one of my other business partners in because she would love this and
Okay.
digging into it and seeing what we can find
Yeah, that would be
solution.
super helpful.
Yeah, because the honorarium piece is it's almost like a volunteer, thanks for being here.
Yes.
And then do they get is there a taxable implication to them?
No,
Okay.
not right now, not as it stands at the moment, right? We cover their expenses, we cover, you know, all of that plus the honorarium. So
Yeah, I just wonder if the honorarium is taxable in any sense, not from your point of view.
yeah,
But they have
I
to-
don't know if they claim it or not.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
exactly. Yeah, let's have a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question about, looking at direct competitors and their wages. And I'm kind of curious about what your thoughts are on, reaching out to some of these people and saying, hey, we're looking at ours. What are you looking at in terms of your compensation? Because I tend to get asked a lot about specific companies and what it is that they're paying when we're evaluating our own. But as an HR manager, I'm not exactly comfortable calling somebody up and saying, can you share your compensation program with me? And what is it, what are your salary bands? What are your wage bands? Things like that. So I kind of wanted to hear what you have to say about that.
Oh, I've been asked the same thing, Robin, like from clients, hey, can you call so-and-so and see if you can find out how much they pay their people? I said, sure. But let me tell you, if someone called me, what I would say, heck no.
Right.
So I'm like, I can try, they can say no. And none of us, well, a lot of us didn't go into HR because we like to be in your face and salesy. And so trying to negotiate that information out of somebody isn't typically our forte. I guess the one thought you could have is if there's about 5 or 6 potential individuals, like competitors that might want to come together to do a comparison and provide that information, maybe you do it from that perspective. If you can, and you say, hey, I think this would be beneficial to all of us. And would we be willing to share the data to one third party who puts it together so we can see where we stand in comparison to similar industries? That's kind of what I would try to negotiate. Because I think when I think about that as an internal HR manager, I'd probably say, as a third party, nobody gets my information, but I get data. I think I'd be okay with that. And essentially what you're doing is what Mercer and Riz and all those other companies do, but just at a smaller scale and a significantly reduced price.
Sorry, just to follow up with that. So a company like Mercer, like, you know, do you have a ballpark on what they charge for, you know, providing you with a compensation analysis within your industry, within your geographical location, things like that, or?
I
No.
don't. I
Okay.
don't have what Mercer, like the data. I know their salary surveys are upwards of like $10,000. But their costing for doing that sort of benchmarking, I don't have. But I'm happy to have a conversation with you to see what it would be that you're looking for and see if we can help you out with it.
That would be great, actually. Thank you.
No problem. If there are any questions that you don't want to ask publicly, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We've got some great people on our team who compensation is their jam, and they totally geek out over it. And we also are working on a compensation toolbox, which is kind of like a do it for you, do it in conjunction with you, low cost offering for small businesses who want some support in benchmarking, because we all say we want this, but let's be honest, there's going to be 18 fires that come up before we might actually have a 3 or 4 hour window to actually sit down and go through some of this information. So if that's you, again, reach out to me. My email address is obviously not on here, which is a big miss here, but I'm laura@essentialhr.ca, and I'm happy to have that conversation. Did we lose Rebecca? Is she gone?
No, I'm still here. Carice, do you want to kind of wrap everything up for us and lead us out?
Yep, sure. So just to reiterate, I am from the West Lincoln Chamber, one of the 3 chambers that make up the West Niagara. So I just wanted to share that to offer some clarity. And so we at the West Niagara Chamber of Commerce wanted to extend a sincere thank you to you, Laura, for your enlightening presentation. Laura's expertise and insights have equipped us with invaluable knowledge to navigate the intricate landscape of compensation management for the year ahead. I also want to thank all those who've logged on today. Your participation and engagement are very, very integral to the success of these sort of endeavors. And we firmly believe that the collaborative chamber events can be a very powerful tool that can offer networking, resource sharing, to support local businesses, while also boosting visibility and fostering innovation through diverse perspectives. So once again, thank you, Laura, for your expertise, and thank you for all our participants. And let's hope we can continue to work together to strengthen our business community.
Thanks so much, everybody.